Elliot Alderson. Character analysis: the hacker who tried to save the world because he could not save himself. The terrifying psychology of hacking reality to escape yourself. Elliot Alderson begins Mr. Robot as one of television's most seductive fantasies, the invisible man who sees everything. He sees the rot inside corporations. He sees the lies inside polite society. He sees the hypocrisy inside powerful people, ordinary people, lonely people, and cruel people. He can read a person's digital life like a confession: passwords, messages, browsing habits, secret accounts, hidden appetites. All of it becomes evident. To Elliot, the world is not mysterious. It is badly secured. That is the first reason audiences admire him. The deeper reason is more uncomfortable. Elliot feels what many people feel, but rarely say cleanly: that modern life is fake, that money has become a moral disease, that people perform happiness while collapsing privately, that everyone is being watched while nobody is being truly seen. He speaks from alienation with such precision that his pain starts to sound like truth. But Elliot's defining contradiction is that he can expose almost any lie, except the one protecting him from himself. His greatest strength is also his deepest wound. He can break into systems because he understands weakness, but he cannot live inside reality, because reality contains the memories, attachments, and truths he has spent his life trying to encrypt. That is why Elliot is more than a brilliant hacker. He is a character about trauma disguised as ideology, loneliness disguised as superiority, and protection disguised as revolution. Who is Elliot Alderson? Elliot Alderson is the central character of Mr. Robot, the psychological techno-thriller created by Sam Esmail and originally aired between 2015 and 2019. He is a cybersecurity engineer at Allsafe, a vigilante hacker, and eventually a key figure in society's campaign against E Corp, the corporate empire he perceives as Evil Corp. The series frames him through hacking, capitalism, mental illness, conspiracy, and identity collapse, with Rami Malek's performance making Elliot both frighteningly closed off and painfully exposed. On the surface, Elliot is the antisocial genius in a black hoodie. He works in cybersecurity by day and hacks people by night. He dislikes touch, distrusts institutions, uses drugs, attends therapy, and narrates his life to an imagined friend. The audience. He is brilliant, suspicious, morally intense, and almost allergic to ordinary social performance. Dramatically, Elliot functions as three things at once. He is the show's protagonist, the viewer's guide into a corrupt digital world. He is the weapon used against that world, and he is the mystery the show is actually solving. That third function is the key. Mr. Robot initially presents Elliot as the person investigating society, but the story gradually turns the investigation inward. The real locked system is not E Corp. It is Elliot Alderson. Surface identity versus real identity. Elliot's surface identity is control. He controls information. He controls access. He controls what people know, what they hide, and what they fear might be exposed. Hacking lets him create distance from the messiness of human intimacy. Instead of asking someone who they are, he extracts the answer. Instead of trusting, he verifies. Instead of risking rejection, he observes from behind a screen. That is why his hacking feels so emotionally loaded. It is not just technical skill, it is a substitute for connection. Elliot wants to know people without needing them. He wants intimacy without vulnerability. He wants truth without conversation. That is the emotional logic behind his vigilante behavior. When he hacks criminals or hypocrites, he is not only punishing them, he is proving that people are safer as data than as relationships. His real identity is far less controlled. He is frightened, fragmented, furious, and starved of love. His moral language is vast: justice, debt, power, revolution. But his private need is painfully small. He wants someone to stay. The tension between those identities drives the whole character. The hacker is precise. The man is breaking apart. The revolutionary wants to liberate the world. The wounded child wants to be protected from it. The core wound. Elliot's core wound is not simply loneliness. Loneliness is the symptom. The deeper wound is violation, the destruction of safety in the place where safety should have existed. Across the series, Elliot's childhood is gradually reinterpreted. His father is first remembered through a softer, almost mythic lens, while Mr. Robot appears as a protective, rebellious version of paternal energy. Later, in 407 Proxy Authentication Required, the show forces Elliot into a devastating confrontation with what his mind has hidden. The fear surrounding his father, the childhood window incident, and the abuse he had been unable to consciously face. The episode's structure makes the revelation feel less like a plot twist than an emotional excavation. This matters because it rewrites Elliot's entire psychology. His dissociation is not random weirdness. His distrust is not just edgy cynicism. His hatred of invisible power is not merely political. His obsession with control is not simply hacker arrogance. He lives as someone whose earliest sense of reality was not reliable. The person who should have protected him became associated with danger. The home became unsafe. Memory became unstable. The mind had to build walls. That is why Elliot's rebellion against systems is so personal. Corrupt systems are external versions of his internal world. Powerful, hidden, abusive, full of secrets, impossible to confront directly. He attacks them because he cannot yet fully attack the original source of terror. He wants the world to confess before he can. The mask they wear. Elliot's mask is detachment. He wears the hoodie like armor. He lowers his voice until emotion becomes almost mechanical. He scans people instead of meeting them. He turns discomfort into contempt and fear into analysis. His social awkwardness is real, but it also becomes a shield. If people experience him as strange, unreachable, or superior, they are less likely to reach the child underneath. The mask has several layers. The first is the hacker mask, the man who knows more than everyone else. The second is the moral mask, the man who is not invading privacy but delivering justice. The third is the outsider mask, the man who does not need society because society is disgusting anyway. The fourth is the narrator mask, the man who talks to a friend because an imaginary audience is safer than a real person. The brilliance of Elliot's mask is that it is not fake in a simple way. He really is intelligent. He really does see corruption. He really is alienated by consumer culture, corporate manipulation, and social performance. His mask works because it is made from true materials, but truth used defensively can still become a prison. Elliot's detachment does not protect him from pain forever. It protects him from healing. The lie Elliot believes. The lie Elliot believes is that control can replace safety. If he can control the system, he will be safe. If he can control the narrative, he will be safe. If he can control people through information, he will be safe. If he can control his memory, identity, and emotional exposure, he will be safe. This lie explains why Elliot's nobility and destructiveness are so tightly linked. He often wants good things: justice, accountability, freedom from corporate domination, punishment for predators, and relief for ordinary people crushed by financial systems. But his method is shaped by a traumatized belief that the world must be forced into correction. He does not merely want change. He wants reality to become less threatening. That is why the 5/9 hack is psychologically loaded. It is presented as an economic revolution. But for Elliot, it also carries the fantasy of a total reset. Erase debt. Collapse the system. Start again. Make the old structure disappear. The problem is that trauma cannot be deleted like a database. Elliot's lie keeps mutating. At first, it sounds like I can improve the world. Later, it becomes I can survive alone. By the end, it becomes something even more dangerous. I can protect the real Elliot by keeping him away from reality. That final version is the most revealing. Elliot's deepest lie is not that he is powerful. It is that disappearance is protection. What Elliot wants is what he actually needs. Elliot wants justice. He wants corrupt people exposed. He wants E Corp punished. He wants debt erased. He wants the machinery of modern exploitation broken open. He wants the world to stop pretending that cruelty is normal just because it is profitable. He also wants control over his mind. He wants clean answers. He wants to know who is real, what happened, who betrayed him, who he can trust, and whether his choices are actually his. But what Elliot needs is not control. He needs integration. He needs to stop treating parts of himself as enemies, glitches, intrusions, or threats. He needs connections strong enough to survive the truth. He needs to be loved without performing usefulness, genius, or revolutionary importance. That is why Darlene matters so much. She does not love Elliot because he is a hacker. She does not love him because he is a symbol. She loves him because he is her brother. Her presence is emotionally dangerous to the false system inside him because she ties him to reality. Elliot wants to save the world because the scale feels worthy of his pain. What he needs is smaller, harder, and more intimate to come back to himself. The psychology behind Elliot's choices. Elliot's choices are shaped by a cycle: threat, withdrawal, surveillance, intervention, collapse. When he feels threatened, he retreats into observation. When observation is not enough, he hacks. When hacking gives him power, he turns power into moral action. When moral action creates consequences, his mind fractures under the pressure. Then the cycle begins again. His coping mechanisms are not random quirks. They are survival behaviors. Hacking gives him certainty. Drug use gives him temporary escape. Isolation reduces emotional risk. Narration gives him companionship without real vulnerability. Dissociation allows unbearable truths to be partitioned. Moral absolutism gives shape to rage that would otherwise feel too chaotic. This is why Elliot can seem both compassionate and cold. He cares deeply about suffering, but individual people can become pieces on a board when the mission takes over. He does not want to hurt innocents, yet his actions unleash consequences he cannot fully manage. He wants liberation, but he often behaves like someone trying to impose order on a world that has never felt safe. The show's most intelligent move is refusing to flatten him into either hero or danger. Elliot is both a victim of profound harm and a person whose choices harm others. His trauma explains his behavior, but it does not erase the cost of it. That cost lands on Shayla, Angela, Darlene, Trenton, Mobley, Gideon, and countless anonymous people dragged into the chaos of a revolution that promised freedom but produced fear, instability, and death. Elliot's moral problem is not that he lacks empathy. It is that pain keeps convincing him that extreme action is the only honest response to a dishonest world. Elliot Alderson's character arc. Starting state: the isolated observer. Elliot begins as a man split between disgust and longing. He despises society, but he is desperate for contact. He hacks people because he cannot bear the uncertainty of ordinary trust. His life is structured around rituals of distance: work, therapy, drugs, screens, secret interventions. The first Elliot we meet is already divided. He believes he is narrating to a friend, but that friend is part of the show's larger question. How many relationships in Elliot's life are attempts to manage unbearable solitude? First disruption. Revolution gives his pain a mission. Mr. Robot and Society turn Elliot's private rage into public action. The target becomes E Corp. The language becomes a revolution. The emotional hook is seductive. What if Elliot's alienation is not damage, but clarity? What if his inability to fit into the world proves the world is the thing that needs to change? This is where audiences are most likely to misread him. Elliot's anger often sounds correct. The world he attacks really is corrupt. But being right about corruption does not mean he is free from distortion. Escalation. The hack does not heal him. The 5/9 hack gives Elliot scale, but not peace. The world changes, yet Elliot does not become whole. In fact, the consequences intensify his fragmentation. The external system breaks, but the internal system remains locked. That is one of the show's sharpest ideas. Revolution can expose power, but it cannot automatically repair the person who made revolution their substitute for healing. Relationship tests. Love keeps breaching the firewall. Shayla, Angela, Darlene, Krista, and even Mr. Robot test Elliot in different ways. Each relationship asks whether he can risk being known without controlling the terms. He repeatedly fails, partly because disclosure feels like danger, yet he also keeps reaching. His longing survives his defenses. That is why Elliot remains emotionally gripping. He does not become cold because he has no heart. He becomes cold because his heart is overloaded. Moral fracture. Control becomes complicity. As the story widens, Elliot has to confront the fact that his actions can be manipulated by forces worse than the ones he wanted to destroy. Whiteros, the Dark Army, E Corp, and the machinery of global power expose the limits of lone genius rebellion. Elliot wanted to be the person outside the system. Instead, he becomes part of systems he cannot fully see. Lowest point. The truth he built himself to avoid. The confrontation with his childhood trauma breaks the illusion that Elliot's deepest enemy is external. The show does not use the revelation cheaply. It forces a reclassification of everything. Mr. Robot's role, Elliot's memory, his fear of intimacy, his rage at power, his terror of being trapped. The enemy was never only capitalism, surveillance, or corruption. The enemy was also the unbearable knowledge his own mind had hidden to keep him alive. Final transformation. Surrender instead of victory. The finale reveals that the Elliot we have followed is not the whole Elliot, but the mastermind, a persona created to handle rage and protect the real Elliot by changing the world. The ending turns the entire series into a story about a protector who becomes a captor. In the final hospital sequence, Darlene's recognition and the mastermind's acceptance allow the real Elliot to wake, making the ending less about defeating an enemy than returning control to the self. That is the final movement. Not domination, but release. Elliot's victory is not that he wins forever. It is that the part of him built to fight finally stops fighting the person it was meant to protect. Elliot and Mr. Robot. Protection, rage, and the father-shaped ghost. Mr. Robot is one of Elliot's most important mirrors because he embodies protection in the shape of danger. At first, he appears as a rebel father figure, charismatic, reckless, anti-corporate, furious at compromise. He gives Elliot permission to act. He turns hesitation into mission. He seems like the part of Elliot brave enough to do what Elliot cannot, but the deeper the show goes, the more complicated that figure becomes. Mr. Robot is not merely chaos. He is a guardian built out of the image of the person Elliot most needed protection from. That contradiction is psychologically brutal. Elliot's mind uses the father shape as a protector because it has to transform terror into something survivable. This is why Mr. Robot can feel loving and frightening in the same breath. He protects Elliot from truths, but that protection can become deception. He shields Elliot, but also controls him. He is necessary, then dangerous, then finally integrated into a larger understanding of Elliot's fractured self. The relationship is not a simple battle between good Elliot and bad Alter. It is a negotiation between survival strategies. Mr. Robot represents the terrible mercy of dissociation, the mind's ability to save a person by dividing them and then endanger them by refusing to reunite. Elliot and Darlene, the person reality cannot delete. Darlene is the emotional anchor of Elliot's story. She is not just his sister or fellow hacker. She is the living proof that Elliot has a life outside his constructed systems. That is why her absence from the fantasy world in the finale matters so much. The illusion cannot include Darlene because she would make the illusion unstable. She knows him too directly. She loves him too specifically. She connects him to the real. Darlene reveals Elliot's tenderness, irritation, guilt, loyalty and dependence. Around her, he is not only the cold hacker. He is a brother who has failed, protected, forgotten, needed, and been needed. Their bond is not sentimental. It is messy, damaged, and often painful. But it is real, in a way Elliot's fantasies are not. Darlene does not rescue Elliot by explaining to him. She rescues him by recognizing him. That distinction is everything. Elliot does not need another system of interpretation. He needs a person who can sit beside the wreckage and still say, "You are here, and I know you." Elliot and Angela, the lost dream of innocence. Angela represents the life Elliot might have wanted if the world had not broken so early. She is childhood, grief, ambition, denial, compromise and longing, all folded into one relationship. With Angela, Elliot is not simply attracted or attached. He is connected to a before E Corp's damage, before adulthood hardened him, before their different coping mechanisms sent them in opposite directions. Angela's arc pressures Elliot because she shows another version of trauma response. Where Elliot rejects the system, Angela tries to enter it, master it, and eventually bend it toward meaning. Her choices reveal how badly people need a story that makes suffering feel purposeful. For Elliot, Angela is both comfort and accusation. She reminds him of who he was, what was stolen, and what cannot be restored through hacking. Their relationship carries a painful truth. Shared wounds do not guarantee shared healing. Sometimes two people are connected by the same damage, but survive it in incompatible ways. Elliot and Shayla. The intimacy he could not secure. Shayla matters because she reaches Elliot in ordinary human terms. She is not a grand ideological figure. She is not a corporate symbol. She is not a childhood ghost. She is messy, warm, vulnerable, and present. Her closeness exposes the part of Elliot that wants life to be softer than his worldview allows. The tragedy surrounding Shayla wounds the audience because it punctures Elliot's fantasy of control. He can hack systems, manipulate criminals, and gather information, but he cannot guarantee safety for someone who matters. With Shayla, Elliot confronts a truth he spends much of the show resisting. Knowledge is not the same as protection. Her death also hardens the emotional logic that already drives him. If closeness creates unbearable loss, then distance starts to look sensible. If love becomes leverage, isolation starts to look moral. That is one reason Elliot's loneliness feels so convincing. He is not merely avoiding discomfort. He is trying to avoid another proof that caring makes people vulnerable. Elliot and Krista, the witness he keeps trying to evade. Krista is one of the only relationships built around Elliot being asked to speak rather than act. That makes her dangerous to him. Therapy requires a kind of courage hacking does not. Hacking lets Elliot enter other people's hidden rooms without opening his own. Therapy asks him to stand inside his own room and describe what is there. Elliot repeatedly resists that process. He lies, withholds, intellectualizes, and controls the frame. Yet Krista remains crucial because she represents a different kind of truth. Not exposure, but witness. In 407 Proxy Authentication Required, Krista becomes part of the forced confrontation Elliot has avoided for years. The scene is unbearable because the therapeutic process is hijacked by violence, but the psychological function remains. Elliot's protected narrative finally collapses. Krista reveals that Elliot does not only fear being harmed, he fears knowing what happened to him. Elliot and Whiterose, competing fantasies of reality. Whiterose is Elliot's dark mirror because both characters are trying to reject reality. Elliot wants to rewrite the world through systems. Whiterose wants to transcend the world through obsession, time, technology, and belief. Both are wounded. Both are brilliant. Both are capable of inspiring devotion. Both turn private grief into an architecture of control. The difference is that Elliot eventually moves towards surrender, while Whiterose moves deeper into domination. Whiterose shows what Elliot could become if pain fully conquered humility. A person convinced that their wound entitles them to redesign existence itself. A person who cannot accept loss, so they build a theology around undoing it. Their opposition is not only ideological, it is spiritual. Whiterose says reality must be defeated. Elliot's ending says reality must be faced. The scene that explains Elliot Alderson best. The scene that explains Elliot best is not one of the hacks. It is the final hospital conversation with Darlene. By this point, the show has stripped away the fantasy of Elliot as simply a lone genius. The Elliot we have followed understands that he is the mastermind, a protector persona who took control to fight the world on behalf of the real Elliot. He has done extraordinary things. He has exposed, attacked, survived, and saved. But the final moral test is not whether he can defeat another villain, it is whether he can stop being the hero. That is a devastating reversal. Most stories reward the protagonist for taking control. Mr. Robot asks its protagonist to give control back. In that moment, Elliot's surface action is acceptance. He listens to Darlene. He understands that she knew something was wrong. He recognizes that the real Elliot has been hidden away in a safe internal world. He finally sees that protection has become imprisonment. What he is protecting underneath is the fantasy that his existence is necessary. The mastermind does not want power in a cartoonish way. He wants to believe that without him, Elliot will be destroyed. That belief is heartbreaking because it is partly loving. He was created to protect. His refusal to let go comes from fear, not vanity alone. What he avoids saying for most of the series is, "I am scared that if I stop fighting, there will be nothing left of me." The contradiction exposed is the whole character in miniature. Elliot's protector has become Elliot's prison. His mission saved lives and damaged lives. His intelligence uncovered truth and concealed truth. His love for the real Elliot became a form of control. The emotional force of the scene comes from its refusal to treat healing as conquest. Elliot does not become whole by defeating the mastermind. He becomes whole because the mastermind finally accepts his place as part of a larger self. That is why Darlene's role is so powerful. She is not impressed by the myth. She is not asking for the revolutionary. She is waiting for her brother. The scene moves the arc from control to surrender, from isolation to recognition, from hello, friend to hello, Elliot. What most people misunderstand. The common misread of Elliot is that he is admirable because he sees through everything. That is only half true. Elliot does see through a lot. Corporate language, digital hypocrisy, fake morality, performative happiness, consumer numbness, and institutional cruelty. His clarity is part of his appeal. He gives voice to the suspicion that the modern world is not merely flawed, but spiritually wrong. But seeing through the world is not the same as understanding yourself. That is the mistake many viewers make when they turn Elliot into a pure power fantasy. They admire the hoodie, the intelligence, the social contempt, the anti-corporate rage, the ability to expose anyone. They treat his isolation as cool rather than costly. The show is not saying Elliot is great because he is detached. It is saying detachment can become a brilliant-looking form of suffering. His intelligence does not make him free. His hacking does not make him intimate. His rebellion does not automatically make him healed. His suspicion protects him from manipulation, but it also keeps him from receiving love cleanly. Elliot is not the fantasy of being too smart for the world. He is the warning that pain can make alienation feel like truth. What most analyses miss is that Mr. Robot is not ultimately about whether Elliot can discover who he is. It is about whether a protective identity can accept that it was never meant to be permanent. That is the knife twist of the finale. The Mastermind is not simply a false Elliot. He is not a villain. He is not an empty trick. He is a real part of Elliot's survival architecture. The audience loves him because we have been with him. We have heard his thoughts. We have suffered through his confusion. We have treated his perspective as the center of the story. Then the show asks us to grieve him without pretending he should remain in charge. That is unusually mature storytelling. Many identity twist narratives use revelation as shock. Mr. Robot uses revelation as reordering. The twist does not erase the character we followed. It changes his function. He was not the destination. He was the emergency system. This reframes the entire series. The hacks, speeches, breakdowns, victories, relapses and revelations become the labor of a part that was built to protect the whole person. The Mastermind's final act is not to win. It is to stop mistaking protection for ownership. That is what most analyses flatten. Elliot's ending is not disappearance. It is right-sizing. A part of him gives up the throne so the full self can return. Why people relate to Elliot Alderson? People relate to Elliot because he expresses alienation without softening it. Most people have felt, at some level, that social life requires performance. Smile correctly, work politely, buy things, build profiles, pretend systems are fair, pretend loneliness is independence, pretend exhaustion is productivity. Elliot refuses that performance so completely that he becomes cathartic. He says the ugly thing. He sees the hidden thing. He does not waste energy pretending the world is fine. For viewers who feel isolated, anxious, angry or unseen, Elliot can feel like recognition. His loneliness is not glamorous in the actual story, but it is emotionally magnetic because it is honest. He makes private disconnection feel narratable. There is also a power fantasy. Elliot is not socially dominant, physically imposing, or conventionally charismatic. Yet he is dangerous because he knows things. In a world where many people feel powerless before institutions, algorithms, banks, employers, and surveillance systems, Elliot offers the fantasy of invisible leverage. But the deepest identification is not with his hacking. It is with his desire to be known without being destroyed. That is a profoundly human fear. Elliot pushes people away yet narrates to a friend. He distrusts intimacy, yet aches for it. He wants the world exposed, but hides himself. That contradiction is why audiences do not merely watch him. They recognize the part of themselves that wants connection, but keeps building exits. The warning hidden inside Elliot Alderson. The danger of admiring Elliot wrongly is that you can mistake damage for depth. His pain gives him insight, but pain alone is not wisdom. His isolation gives him perspective, but isolation alone is not strength. His suspicion protects him from certain lies, but suspicion can become its own lie. His rage points at real injustice, but rage can also recruit morality as camouflage. Elliot is not a lifestyle model. He is not proof that emotional withdrawal makes someone superior. He is not proof that trauma automatically produces truth. He is not proof that intelligence excuses harm. He is not proof that being right about society means you are right about yourself. The show's warning is sharper than simple hacking is bad morality. It warns that a person can build an entire identity around not being hurt again. That identity may look principled. It may look brilliant. It may even change the world. But if it cannot accept love, memory, grief, accountability, and surrender, it will eventually become another locked room. Elliot's story asks a brutal question. What if the thing you call protection is the thing keeping you trapped? Elliot Alderson's legacy. Elliot lasts because he belongs to the digital age without being reduced to it. He is a hacker, but he is not just a tech character. He is a mental health character, a political character, a trauma character, a loneliness character, and a modern masculinity character. He captures the emotional temperature of a world where people are hyper-connected and profoundly alone. His legacy also depends on timing. Mr. Robot arrived in an era of distrust. Distrust of corporations, platforms, banks, governments, data collection, billionaire power, institutional language, and curated identity. Elliot became the face of that distrust, not because he had all the answers, but because he embodied the psychic cost of seeing too much and belonging nowhere. Rami Malek's performance is central to that legacy. He plays Elliot with stillness, tension, watchfulness, and sudden vulnerability. The performance avoids making Elliot merely cool. His body often looks like it is bracing for impact. His eyes seem both forensic and frightened. He can appear empty 1 second and overwhelmed the next. That is why the character still matters. Elliot is not a fantasy of perfect rebellion. He is a portrait of what happens when a broken person tries to repair a broken world before learning how to live inside himself. Final meaning. Elliot Alderson's story ends with one of television's most emotionally intelligent reversals. The man who spent the series breaking into systems finally has to stop breaking into his own life. The revolutionary has to step back. The protector has to release control. The narrator has to stop speaking over the person he was built to defend. The mind that created rooms, masks, missions, enemies, fantasies, and friends has to allow reality back in. That does not make Elliot's pain meaningless. It makes it survivable. His story matters because it understands something many stories avoid. Healing is not always a dramatic triumph. Sometimes it is a surrender. Sometimes it is letting the part of you that fought hardest finally rest. Sometimes it is accepting that the world cannot be hacked into becoming safe enough to avoid being human. Elliot wanted to save the world because he could not save himself. By the end, the most radical thing he does is make room for the self he was trying to protect. Hello, Elliot. Summary. Elliot Alderson is one of television's most psychologically powerful characters because his greatest strength is also his deepest wound. He can expose hidden systems, corrupt people, and digital lies, but he cannot easily face the truths buried inside himself. His hacking is not just skill, it is a substitute for intimacy, safety, and control. Across Mr. Robot, Elliot's arc moves from alienated observer to revolutionary weapon to fractured protector. His war against E Corp reflects a deeper war against memory, trauma, and vulnerability. The revelation of his childhood abuse, the role of Mr. Robot, and the final Mastermind twist reframe the entire series as a story about survival mechanisms that become prisons. What makes Elliot unforgettable is not that he is smarter than everyone else. It is that his intelligence cannot save him from needing love, truth, and integration. Darlene, Krista, Angela, Shayla, Mr. Robot, and White Rose each reveal different parts of him: tenderness, denial, fear, rage, dependency, and the danger of trying to rewrite reality. Elliot's final meaning is not victory through control. It is healing through surrender. The protector steps aside so the real Elliot can return.